The massive space station called Nexus Prime floated in the empty space between three star systems. It was bigger than most moons and had been built by 12 different alien races working together. Today, it hosted the most important meeting in the galaxy. Admiral Sarah Chen looked out the window of her small transport ship as they got closer to the station. She had never seen anything like it before. The station had tall crystal towers that sparkled with blue light, metal sections that moved and changed shape by themselves, and areas that seemed to be made of pure energy. "First time seeing alien technology up close?" asked Captain Rodriguez, the pilot of their ship. "First time this far from Earth," Chen replied. "Hard to believe we're really here." Their ship was tiny compared to the other vessels docked at Nexus Prime. Some ships looked like living creatures with wings and tentacles. Others were perfect geometric shapes that hurt to look at directly. A few seemed to be made of light itself, changing colors as they moved. The human transport ship looked like a metal box with engines compared to these alien wonders. Chen straightened her blue military uniform and checked her appearance one more time. As Earth's representative to the Galactic Council, she had to make a good impression. Behind her sat 12 other humans, all military officers and scientists. They looked nervous but determined. "Remember," Chen told her team, "we're here to observe and learn. These aliens have been traveling between stars for thousands of years. We've barely been in space for 2 centuries. The docking process took an hour. Alien technology guided their ship into a docking bay that adjusted itself to fit their vessel perfectly. When the doors opened, they were greeted by a floating robot that spoke perfect English. "Welcome, humans from Earth. Please follow the blue lights to the main assembly hall." The inside of Nexus Prime was even more amazing than the outside. The corridors were wide enough for creatures much larger than humans. Some sections had different gravity, allowing beings to walk on walls and ceilings. The air itself seemed to shimmer with energy. They passed other delegates heading to the same meeting. Chen tried not to stare, but it was impossible not to be amazed. One group looked like walking crystals that rang like bells when they moved. Another species was made of what appeared to be liquid metal that flowed rather than walked. A third group seemed to be made of pure light, their forms constantly shifting and changing. The assembly hall was enormous. It could have held 1,000,000 beings easily. Thousands of different alien species filled the space, each group sitting in areas designed for their specific needs. Some seats floated in the air. Others were filled with water or strange gases. The humans were directed to a small section near the back. Their simple metal chairs looked very basic compared to the advanced seating around them. "Look at that," whispered Dr. Kim, pointing to a group of insect-like creatures. Each one was the size of a small car with multiple arms and glowing eyes. "Those must be the Zephyrians we read about." Nearby, a group of crystalline beings reflected light in rainbow patterns across the hall. These were the Vorthak, known throughout the galaxy for their advanced energy weapons. On the far side sat beings that looked like they were made of pure energy, their forms shifting between different shapes. The Luminari were rumored to be able to control stars themselves. "Welcome to the Centennial Warfare Assessment Summit," announced a voice that somehow spoke in every language at once. The speaker was a massive creature that looked like a combination of octopus and tree, with dozens of arms and a trunk-like body. "I am Council Speaker Vexithera. We gather today as we have for the past 1,000 years to demonstrate our military capabilities and maintain peace through strength." Chen listened as the speaker explained the purpose of the meeting. Every 100 years, the major species of the galaxy came together to show their weapons and military technology. This prevented wars by making sure everyone knew what everyone else was capable of. "We will begin with the Vorthak Collective," announced the speaker. The crystalline beings moved forward in perfect formation. Their leader, a tall crystal creature that sparkled with internal light, stepped onto a platform in the center of the hall. Behold the power of quantum phase disruption, the Vorthak leader said. The creature raised what looked like a crystal rod, and suddenly the air in front of it began to tear apart. Reality itself seemed to bend and twist, creating a hole in space that led to nowhere. The demonstration lasted only seconds, but every being in the hall felt the power of it. This weapon could tear apart planets, make entire fleets disappear into nothing. Next came the Zephyrians. Their hive queen, a massive insect creature with wings that sparkled like metal, commanded her warriors with silent thought. Hundreds of smaller insect beings moved as one, creating complex patterns in the air. They demonstrated their bioweapons, showing how they could adapt their bodies to any environment and create living tools from their own flesh. The Luminari were next. Their representative, a being of pure light that constantly shifted shape, reached out and touched the air. Suddenly, a miniature star appeared in the center of the hall. The star grew larger and brighter until the heat could be felt by everyone present, then disappeared just as quickly. We can create and destroy stars at will, the Luminari announced. Entire solar systems bow to our power. The Cognitrons followed with their demonstration of self-replicating machines. Their metallic leader released a single small robot into the hall. Within minutes, that robot had built copies of itself, which built more copies, until thousands of machines filled the air in perfect formation. One by one, each species showed weapons that could destroy worlds, control time, manipulate matter at the atomic level, or command forces that humans could barely understand. Finally, all eyes turned to the small human section. And now, announced Council Speaker Vexathera, we welcome our newest members to the Galactic Council, the humans from the planet Earth. Please demonstrate your species' greatest military achievement. Chen stood slowly and walked to the center of the hall. Thousands of alien eyes focused on her. She could feel their curiosity and something else, amusement. To these advanced beings, humans were like children who had just learned to walk. Honored delegates, Chen began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's translation systems. We are grateful to be included in this gathering. We have observed your demonstrations with great interest and respect. She paused, looking around at the assembled aliens. You ask for our greatest military achievement. We have brought no special weapons, no advanced technology that you have not seen before. We brought only ourselves. A sound like laughter came from the Zephyrian section. The crystalline Vorthak rang with what sounded like musical mockery. Though Vorthak Prime Speaker, a massive crystal being that towered over Chen, stepped forward. Surely you jest, human? Your species has some weapon, some technology of note? Do you perhaps plan to throw stones at your enemies? Chen smiled, an expression that seemed to confuse many of the alien observers. If necessary, she replied simply. The hall fell silent. The alien delegates looked at each other in confusion and growing annoyance. Had these primitive humans come all this way just to waste their time? Hive Queen Zalara of the Zephyrians moved forward, her massive insect form clicking with irritation. Perhaps these humans need a demonstration of what real military power means. I propose a test. Chen waited, still smiling that mysterious smile that seemed to unnerve the aliens more than any weapon demonstration might have. There is an ancient fortress on the moon of Kepler 442b, Zalara continued. It has stood for 10,000 years. No weapon has ever breached its walls, no army has ever conquered it. Let each species attempt to take this fortress. The humans may go last, after they have seen how real civilizations conduct warfare. The other alien leaders murmured agreement. This would be entertaining. Watching these newcomers fail where advanced species had tried and failed for millennia. Chen looked back at her small team of humans, then at the thousands of alien warriors surrounding them. She nodded once. We accept your challenge. The mood in the Great Hall changed quickly after Admiral Chen accepted the challenge. What had started as polite curiosity about the newcomers from Earth turned into something much more serious. The alien delegates began talking excitedly among themselves in languages that sounded like music, grinding metal, and electronic signals. Hive Queen Zilara clicked her massive mandibles together in satisfaction. Her compound eyes reflected the lights of the hall as she looked down at the small, human admiral. Excellent. The rules are simple, humans. Each species gets exactly 72 hours to breach the fortress using their own methods and weapons. We will go in order of galactic seniority. The Vorthak Prime Speaker, whose crystal body rang like a bell when he moved, stepped forward. The Vorthak Collective will demonstrate proper military efficiency first. Our quantum phase disruptors will make short work of this ancient structure. The Luminari shall follow, announced their representative, a being of shifting light, whose voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. We will show how stellar manipulation can overcome any defense. One by one, each major species claimed their position in the demonstration. The cognitrons with their self-replicating machines, the aquatic builders with their living weapons, the energy weavers with their reality-bending technology, all of them eager to show these primitive humans what real military power looked like. Chen listened to each declaration with that same calm smile. Her team of 12 humans sat quietly behind her, taking notes on simple paper tablets while surrounded by beings using technology that could record every atom in the room. We will monitor all attempts from the orbital stations above Kepler 442b, explained Council Speaker Vexathara. The fortress has sensors throughout its structure. Any breach of the outer walls, any penetration of the inner chambers, any damage to its core systems will be recorded and verified. Dr. Kim leaned forward and whispered to Chen. Admiral, do we actually have a plan for this? That fortress has withstood attacks from civilizations that can move stars. Chen made a note on her paper pad. We have time to think about it. Let's see what these other species try first. The meeting hall began to empty as delegates returned to their ships to prepare. The demonstration would begin in one standard galactic day. Each species would have their turn, with the entire galaxy watching through quantum communication networks. As the humans walked back to their small transport ship, they passed groups of alien warriors preparing for battle. The Zephyrians were growing new bioweapons from their own bodies, creating acid that could eat through any known material. The Vorthak were calibrating crystal arrays that could phase entire mountains out of existence. Look at that, said Captain Rodriguez, pointing to a cognitron ship where thousands of small robots were building larger robots, which were building even larger robots. They could probably build an army bigger than Earth's entire population in a few hours. Impressive, Chen agreed. But remember what happened to every previous attempt on this fortress. Back on their ship, Chen called her team together for a private meeting. The 12 humans sat around a simple metal table while, outside their windows, alien war fleets prepared weapons that could destroy solar systems. All right, people, let's talk about what we're up against, Chen began. This fortress on Kepler 442b has been studied by every major civilization in the galaxy. The data we were given shows it's made of some unknown material that adapts to whatever attacks it. Energy weapons make it stronger. Physical attacks cause it to grow thicker walls. Even time manipulation weapons have no effect. Lieutenant Torres, their communications specialist, raised her hand. Admiral, why are we doing this? We don't have weapons like theirs. We don't have their technology or their resources. Because, Chen replied, sometimes the best way to solve a problem isn't with the biggest hammer. Sometimes you need to think differently. She activated a holographic display showing the fortress. It was a massive structure, black as space itself, with walls that seemed to absorb light. It had no obvious doors or windows, no visible weapons or defenses. It simply sat on the moon's surface, waiting. The aliens see this as a military problem. Chen continued. They're thinking about how to break it, destroy it, overcome it. But what if we're asking the wrong question? Dr. Kim studied the hologram. What do you mean? What if the question isn't how to break the fortress, but why it's there in the first place? What if understanding comes before attacking? The team spent hours studying every piece of available data about the fortress. They read reports from dozens of failed attacks over thousands of years. Energy weapons, matter disruptors, reality, manipulators, time dilators. Every advanced technology in the galaxy had been tried. There's something strange about the failure patterns, noted Dr. Singh, their engineer. Look at this data. The fortress doesn't just defend itself, it learns from each attack and gets better at stopping that type of weapon. Almost like it's alive, whispered Torres. Chen made another note. While her team worked, she composed a carefully worded message. To Earth. It was encoded using an old military cipher that looked like routine supply requests to any alien interceptors. Supply request authorization, Darwin 77. Request immediate shipment of package Omega to Kepler 442b coordinates. Standard Earth military supplies only, highest priority. 3 days later, the demonstrations began. The Vorthak went first, as promised. Their crystal ships positioned themselves around the fortress like points of a star. The quantum phase disruptors charged with energy that made space itself tremble. Every being in the galaxy with access to quantum communication watched as purple beams of pure destruction struck the fortress from 12 directions at once. The beams tore holes in reality itself, creating tears in space-time that should have erased anything they touched. For a moment, the fortress seemed to flicker and fade. Victory cheers began among the Vorthak fleet. Then the fortress reappeared, completely undamaged. Not only had it survived the attack, but its black walls now had a purple shimmer that matched the Vorthak weapons exactly. The Zephyrians were next. Their bioships descended on the fortress like a swarm of insects. They released clouds of acid that could dissolve entire planets, deployed living weapons that could eat through any material, and sent wave after wave of adaptive warriors that could change their bodies to overcome any defense. The fortress absorbed the acid, turned the living weapons into harmless plants, and somehow converted the attacking bio-warriors into defenders of its own walls. The Luminari attempted to overload the fortress by channeling the energy of nearby stars directly into its structure. They created temperatures hot enough to melt planets and energy fields strong enough to bend space. The fortress absorbed every bit of energy and used it to grow larger and stronger. One by one, each species tried their greatest weapons and most advanced technologies. The Cognitron's self-replicating machines were reprogrammed by the fortress and turned against their creators. The Energy Weaver's reality-bending attacks were reflected back at their own ships. After 11 failures, the alien delegates were no longer amused by the human observers. They were embarrassed and angry. How could their advanced technologies fail so completely against one ancient structure? Perhaps, suggested Hive Queen Zylara with barely contained fury, the humans have some insight into this problem, since they claim to have brought such powerful weapons? All eyes turned to Admiral Chen, who had been taking notes throughout every failed attack. She closed her paper notebook and stood up. "We'll need to send for our equipment," she said calmly. "It should arrive within the next few hours." "What equipment?" demanded the Vorthak Prime Speaker. "You said you brought nothing special." "We didn't bring it with us," Chen explained. "We called for it after accepting your challenge. Standard Earth military supplies as requested." The aliens waited impatiently as a small Earth cargo ship arrived. At Kepler 442b. It was tiny compared to their massive war fleets, barely large enough to carry a few dozen humans and their gear. "That's your secret weapon?" laughed one of the Cognitron representatives. "That small transport?" Chen smiled. "Sometimes the best tools are the simple ones." As her team prepared to depart for the moon's surface, she made one final announcement to the assembled alien delegates. "We'll begin our attempt in exactly 12 hours. I suggest you watch carefully. You might learn something useful." The aliens settled in to watch what they expected to be the most entertaining failure yet. After all, if civilizations that could manipulate time and space couldn't breach the fortress, what could these primitive humans possibly do? They were about to find out. The moon of Kepler 442b was a dead, gray world covered in the scars of 10,000 years of failed military campaigns. Massive craters marked where luminary starfire had struck. Strange crystal formations showed where Vorthak phase weapons had tried to tear reality apart. In some places, the ground still moved and shifted, where cognitron machines had tried to rebuild the entire moon. At the center of it all sat the fortress. Admiral Chen stood with her small team on a ridge overlooking their target. The structure was even more impressive in person than it had been in the holographic displays. It rose from the moon's surface like a black mountain, its walls smooth and featureless. There were no windows, no doors, no obvious weak points. "It's beautiful," whispered Dr. Kim, and she was right. Despite being a military fortification, there was something elegant about the fortress. It seemed to belong on the moon, as if it had grown there naturally rather than being built. "Package Omega has been delivered to the landing site," reported Captain Martinez, their demolitions expert. He was a short, stocky man from Texas who had learned his trade by blowing up tree stumps on his family farm. "All equipment accounted for." Chen nodded and activated her communicator. Above them in orbit, the combined fleets of 11 alien civilizations waited and watched. Quantum sensors monitored every move the humans made. This would be broadcast. "Live across the galaxy. This is Admiral Chen to all observing vessels. We are beginning our approach to the target. Please maintain your positions and record everything." The human team made their way down the ridge toward the fortress. Unlike the previous alien attempts, they moved slowly and carefully. Dr. Singh, their geologist, stopped every few meters to collect rock samples. Torres used simple handheld instruments to take readings. "What are they doing?" the watching aliens asked each other. The humans weren't deploying weapons or setting up energy projectors. They weren't even scanning the fortress with advanced sensors. Instead, Sergeant Williams pulled out a pair of old-fashioned binoculars and studied the fortress walls. Dr. Park, their biologist, was examining the strange plants that grew around the fortress's base, the same plants that had been created from failed Zephyrian bioweapons. "Are they taking pictures?" asked a confused cognitron observer, watching Dr. Kim use an actual camera instead of quantum imaging technology. The humans spent the entire first day just looking at the fortress. They walked around its entire perimeter, which took 8 hours. They made sketches on paper. They took notes in physical notebooks. They collected samples of dirt, rocks, and the strange mutated plants. Most puzzling of all, they talked to each other constantly. Not through advanced communication networks, but by speaking out loud. The alien observers could hear every word through their monitoring systems. "Look at this pattern in the wall," said Dr. Singh, pointing at what appeared to be a perfectly smooth surface. "Do you see how it's slightly different here? The soil composition changes right at this line," added Dr. Park, showing dirt samples that looked identical to alien sensors, but apparently meant something to human eyes. "Why aren't they attacking?" demanded Hive Queen Xylara. "They're wasting time with primitive analysis methods." But Admiral Chen wasn't wasting time. While her team gathered information using methods the aliens considered obsolete, she was learning things their advanced sensors had missed. On the second day, the humans began what looked like construction work. But instead of building weapons or siege engines, they were setting up simple shelters and work areas. Captain Martinez unpacked crates of equipment that looked ancient compared to alien technology. "Is that explosive powder?" asked a Vorthak observer, studying the chemical. Signatures. They're using chemical explosives? Those are barely more advanced than rocks and sticks. The aliens watched in growing confusion as Martinez began digging holes in the moon's surface. Not near the fortress, but scattered across the surrounding area in what seemed like random locations. Meanwhile, Dr. Torres had set up a communication station. But instead of trying to hack the fortress's systems or overwhelm its defenses, she was doing something the aliens had never seen before. She was sending simple signals, mathematical sequences, basic patterns, even children's songs from Earth. What is she trying to accomplish? Wondered a Luminari observer. Those signals are too primitive to affect any advanced system. By the end of the second day, the humans still hadn't attacked the fortress. They had built a small camp, placed explosives in seemingly random locations, and filled dozens of notebooks with observations and sketches. The alien observers were growing impatient. Some were beginning to suspect the humans were stalling because they had no real plan. On the third and final day, something changed. It started when Dr. Singh made an announcement to his team. "I've found it," he said, pointing to a section of the moon's surface that looked identical to every other section. "The stress fracture runs right through here." Captain Martinez studied the area Singh had indicated. To alien sensors, it was just normal moon rock. But Martinez, who had spent years reading the land around his family farm, could see what the aliens missed. "You're right," he said. "The ground's been shifting here for years. Probably thermal expansion from all those energy weapon attacks. If we place charges at these specific points..." He marked locations on a hand-drawn map. While Martinez prepared his explosives, Dr. Torres made a breakthrough of her own. She had been sending signals to the fortress for 2 days, and finally received an answer. Not through advanced quantum communication, but through simple light patterns on the fortress walls. "It's responding," she called to Admiral Chen. "The fortress is trying to communicate." "What's it saying?" Chen asked. Torres studied the blinking lights on the fortress walls. The pattern was complex but followed mathematical principles. I think it's lonely." The alien observers fell silent. In all their thousands of years of studying the fortress, none of them had considered that it might be a living intelligence rather than just an advanced defense system. "That's impossible," declared the Vorthak Prime speaker. "It's a military installation, not a being." But as Torres continued her light-pattern conversation with the fortress, it became clear that something was happening. The fortress walls began to pulse with soft, rhythmic light. The hostile energy fields that had destroyed so many alien weapons flickered and dimmed. "It's been alone for 10,000 years, Torres explained to her team. "Everyone who comes here tries to destroy it or break into it. No one has ever tried to just talk to it." Admiral Chen made her decision. "Martinez, are your charges ready?" "Yes, ma'am." Placed exactly where Singh indicated. "But Admiral, if I'm right about this, we're not going to be attacking the fortress at all." "Correct," Chen replied. "We're going to do something no one has tried before. We're going to help it." She activated her communicator to address the watching alien fleets. "All observers, please maintain safe distance. We are beginning our final approach." What happened next shocked every civilization in the galaxy. Instead of attacking the fortress, Martinez detonated his explosives in the predetermined pattern around the moon's surface. The charges were small compared to the weapons the aliens had used, but they were placed with surgical precision at exactly the right geological stress points. The moon shook gently, not violently like during the alien attacks, but with a rhythmic motion that seemed almost musical. The stress fractures that had been building in the moon's crust for millennia were relieved in a controlled, harmless way. For the first time in 10,000 years, the fortress stopped experiencing constant microtremors from thermal expansion and seismic stress. The ground beneath it stabilized completely. The fortress's walls pulsed with light patterns that even the aliens could recognize as expressions of relief and gratitude. "Impossible," whispered Hive Queen Xylara. They didn't attack it. They helped it? But the humans weren't done yet. Dr. Torres, still communicating with the fortress through light patterns, made a request that would have seemed ridiculous to any military strategist. "May we come inside?" she asked, flashing the question. In simple mathematical code, the fortress considered for a long moment. Then, for the first time in recorded history, a door appeared in its smooth black walls. Admiral Chen and her team walked inside the most impregnable fortress in the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as invited guests. The alien observers sat in stunned silence as they watched the humans disappear into the structure that had defeated every military force in known space. "How?" demanded the Cognitron representative. "How did they succeed where we failed?" Council Speaker Vexathara was quiet for a long time before answering, because they understood something we did not. Sometimes the greatest victory comes not from defeating your enemy, but from making a friend. Inside the fortress, Admiral Chen and her team walked through corridors filled with soft, welcoming light, guided by an ancient intelligence that had visitors in 10,000 years. They had done something no alien civilization had thought to try. They had treated the fortress not as an obstacle to overcome, but as a being to understand. And in doing so, they had achieved what all the galaxy's greatest weapons could not. Inside the fortress, Admiral Chen and her team found themselves in a world unlike anything they had imagined. The corridors were not the cold military passages they expected, but warm spaces filled with soft light that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The air hummed with a gentle energy that felt almost alive. "My God," whispered Dr. Kim as they walked deeper into the structure. "It's beautiful." The walls showed them pictures, not on screens or displays, but somehow painted with light itself. Images of stars, planets, and civilizations from across the galaxy flickered and changed as they passed. Some showed species the humans recognized from the Galactic Council. Others depicted beings they had never seen before, creatures that must have existed thousands of years ago. Dr. Torres kept her simple communication device active, maintaining the light pattern conversation with the fortress. "It's showing us its memories," she explained. 10,000 years of visitors, all trying to break down its doors." "Why did it fight them?" asked Captain Martinez, still carrying his demolition equipment, even though he no longer expected to use it. The answer came as more images on the walls. The fortress had been built not as a weapon, but as a library. It contained the collected knowledge of an ancient civilization that had disappeared long before any current galactic species had developed space travel. For millennia, it had waited for someone worthy to receive this knowledge. But every species that came here tried to force their way in, Chen realized. They proved they weren't ready by the very act of attacking. The fortress pulsed with what could only be described as agreement. Through Torres's translation, it explained that it had defended itself because it had a duty to protect the knowledge inside. Only when visitors showed wisdom instead of violence would it share its treasures. "The humans showed wisdom," Torres translated, her voice filled with wonder. "By helping instead of attacking, by communicating instead of destroying, by caring about the fortress's well-being instead of just wanting to defeat it." They reached the central chamber after walking for nearly an hour. The room was vast, with a domed ceiling that showed the stars as they appeared from this moon. But these weren't just pictures. The ceiling somehow displayed real-time images of the galaxy around them. At the center of the room stood a pillar of the same black material as the fortress walls. As they approached, it began to glow with soft, welcoming light. "It wants to share its knowledge with us," Torres said, reading the fortress's light signals. "Everything the ancient builders learned about science, technology, philosophy, art. 10,000 years of information, waiting for the right people." Dr. Singh stepped forward and placed his hand on the pillar. Immediately, his eyes widened with amazement. I can see geological processes across entire galaxies, methods for predicting planetary formation that we never dreamed of. One by one, each team member touched the pillar and received knowledge in their area of expertise. Dr. Kim learned medical techniques that could cure diseases Earth had never encountered. Captain Martinez discovered engineering principles that could build structures lasting millions of years. But the fortress wasn't just sharing technical information. It was also asking questions about Earth, about human civilization, about the strange species that had succeeded where all others had failed. It wants to know about our music, Torres reported with a smile. It's been so lonely, and it's curious about human culture. Dr. Park began humming a simple folk song from her childhood in Korea. The fortress walls resonated with the melody, creating harmonics that turned the simple tune into something beautiful and complex. Soon, the entire team was singing together, their voices echoing through the ancient chamber. Above them in orbit, the alien observers watched their monitoring equipment with growing confusion and concern. "They've been inside for 3 hours," reported a Vorthak technician. "Our sensors show no signs of combat, no energy discharges, no evidence of forced entry into secure areas." "What are they doing in there?" demanded Hive Queen Xylara. The answer came when Admiral Chen's voice crackled over the communication systems. "This is Admiral Chen to all observing vessels. We have successfully established peaceful contact with the fortress's intelligence. The fortress has agreed to share selected information with the Galactic Council, provided all future interactions are conducted peacefully." Stunned silence filled every alien ship. "The fortress is alive?" asked the Cognitron representative. "Not alive in the biological sense," Chen's voice replied. "But it is an intelligence. A guardian built by an ancient civilization to protect their knowledge until worthy successors appeared. It has been testing every species that came here, waiting for visitors who would show wisdom instead of aggression." "And you passed this test?" The Vorthak Prime speaker's voice carried disbelief and something that might have been anger. "We didn't try to pass a test," Chen replied. "We just tried to understand what we were dealing with instead of immediately attacking it. Sometimes the best way to solve a problem isn't to fight it." The implications of this statement rippled through the alien fleets. For millennia, they had assumed the fortress was simply an incredibly advanced defense system. The idea that it was an intelligence, waiting for the right kind of contact, challenged everything they thought they knew about military strategy. Inside the fortress, the human team continued their peaceful exchange with the ancient guardian. They learned about technologies that could restore dead planets, energy sources that could power civilizations for millions of years, and medical techniques that could extend lifespans beyond anything currently known in the galaxy. But perhaps, more importantly, they learned about the civilization that had built the fortress. The ancients, as Torres began calling them, had faced the same challenges that modern galactic society dealt with. Different species competing for resources, conflicts over territory, the constant threat of war. They solved it, Chen realized, as she absorbed the fortress's historical records. They found a way for hundreds of different species to live together peacefully. That's the real knowledge this fortress is protecting. Not just technology, but wisdom about cooperation and understanding. The fortress confirmed her understanding with pulses of warm light. It's willing to share this knowledge with the current galactic civilization, Torres translated, but only if they prove they can learn from it. The fortress wants to establish a school here where representatives from all species can come to learn not just about technology, but about peaceful coexistence. Back on the alien ships, the leaders of 12 different civilizations tried to process this information. They had come expecting to watch humans fail embarrassingly at a military exercise. Instead, they were witnessing the first successful contact with one of the galaxy's greatest mysteries. "This changes everything," admitted Council Speaker Vexathera. "If the fortress contains the accumulated knowledge of the ancients, we must have access to this information immediately," demanded the Vorthak Prime speaker. Our civilization requires these advanced technologies. As do the Zephyrians, added Hive Queen Zylara. The Hive must grow and expand. This ancient knowledge could accelerate our development by millennia. But Admiral Chen's response, when it came, surprised them all. The fortress has made its conditions clear, she said. Knowledge will be shared freely with any species that demonstrates they can learn from it responsibly, but it will not be taken by force or used for conquest. The ancients built safeguards into their systems specifically to prevent their knowledge from being used for destruction. And who decides what constitutes responsible use? Asked the Luminari representative. The fortress itself, Chen replied. It's been watching galactic civilization for 10,000 years. It knows which species are ready for which types of knowledge. It will share healing technologies with those who will use them to help others. It will share energy production methods with those who will use them sustainably. It will share defensive technologies with those who will use them only for protection. The alien leaders began arguing among themselves. Some demanded immediate access to all the fortress's secrets. Others worried about the implications of an ancient intelligence judging their worthiness. But inside the fortress, the human team was learning something else entirely. They were discovering that the greatest weapon wasn't technology at all, but the ability to understand and communicate with others. The ancients didn't disappear because they were conquered, Torres explained to her teammates as she translated more of the fortress's memories. They evolved beyond the need for physical existence. They became something greater, a civilization based on pure knowledge and understanding. And they left this fortress behind as a gift, added Dr. Singh, waiting for younger civilizations to mature enough to receive it. Admiral Chen looked around at her small team of humans who had accomplished what the galaxy's greatest military forces could not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through simple human traits that the aliens had overlooked: curiosity, empathy, and the willingness to try a different approach. Well, she said with a smile, I think we've learned something important about our place in the galaxy. Outside, the alien fleets continued their debates about access to the 6 hours after the humans had entered the fortress. Admiral Chen and her team finally emerged. The watching alien fleets had spent that time in heated discussions, arguments, and increasingly desperate attempts to scan the fortress with every sensor they possessed. None of their advanced technology could penetrate the structure to see what the humans were doing inside. As the 12 humans walked out of the fortress, the massive black structure behind them pulsed with gentle light, patterns that seemed almost like a farewell. The door through which they had entered sealed itself, but the fortress no longer felt hostile or threatening. Instead, it seemed peaceful, even welcoming. Admiral Chen activated her communicator to address the assembled alien fleets. This is Admiral Chen. We are ready to return to Nexus Prime for debriefing. What happened in there? Demanded the Vorthak Prime speaker before Chen could say anything else. What technologies did you discover? What weapons did the fortress contain? Chen paused, looking back at the fortress that had become humanity's first true ally in the galaxy. We found something more valuable than weapons, Prime Speaker. We found a teacher. The journey back to Nexus Prime passed in tense silence. The alien delegates filled the communication channels with speculation and demands for information, but the humans remained quiet about their experience inside the fortress. They had agreed among themselves to let Admiral Chen handle the explanations once they were all together again. The great assembly hall of Nexus Prime had never been more crowded. Word of the humans' success had spread throughout the galaxy faster than light itself. Representatives from dozens of minor species had arrived to witness the debriefing. The major powers sat in their designated areas, but the tension between them was obvious to everyone present. Admiral Chen stood once again in the center of the hall, but this time she was not alone. Her 11 teammates stood with her, each carrying simple paper notebooks filled with handwritten observations. Compared to the quantum data storage devices used by every other species in the hall, the humans looked primitive and out of place. "Honored delegates," Chen began, "you have asked us to demonstrate our species' greatest weapon. Today we did exactly that." "You used chemical explosives and basic communication equipment," interrupted Hive Queen Xylara. "How do you call such primitive tools your greatest weapons?" Chen smiled the same mysterious smile that had puzzled the aliens from the beginning. "Because those weren't our weapons. Those were just tools. Our weapons are much more dangerous than anything you've seen today." The hall fell silent. Every sensor focused on the small group of humans. "You want to know what our weapons are?" Chen continued. "Here they are." She gestured to Sergeant Martinez. "We brought a demolitions expert who learned his trade blowing up tree stumps on his family's farm in Texas. When he looked at your impregnable fortress, he didn't see an impossible challenge. He saw a structure sitting on unstable ground that needed help." Martinez stepped forward, his simple notebook in his hands. "I've been working with explosives since I was 12 years old, helping my grandfather clear land for farming. You learn to read the earth, to understand how forces move through rock and soil. All your fancy energy weapons missed the real problem. The fortress was stressed because the moon's surface had been fractured by 10,000 years of attacks. We brought a geologist," Chen continued, indicating Dr. Singh, "who could read the story of that moon just by looking at rocks. While your sensors saw only uniform lunar material, he saw thermal expansion patterns, stress fractures, and geological instability that had been building for millennia." Dr. Singh held up a simple rock sample. "This came from the area around the fortress." Any human geologist would have recognized the signs immediately. The moon was shifting beneath the fortress, causing constant micro-tremors. The structure wasn't hostile. It was uncomfortable. "We brought a communications specialist," Chen said, gesturing to Dr. Torres, "who spent years learning to talk to soldiers suffering from trauma. When she looked at the fortress's defensive behaviors, she didn't see a military installation. She saw the signs of an intelligence that had been isolated and misunderstood for 10,000 years. Torres stepped forward. "I've worked with PTSD, patients who became defensive and hostile because they felt threatened and alone. The fortress was exhibiting the same patterns. Once I started treating it as a traumatized being instead of a computer system, communication became possible. One by one, Chen introduced each member of her team and explained how their uniquely human perspectives had allowed them to solve a problem that had stumped the galaxy's greatest minds. We brought a biologist who understood that life finds a way to adapt and survive, even in the harshest conditions. When she saw the mutated plants around the fortress, she realized they weren't random growths. They were the fortress trying to create a garden to make its environment more welcoming. We brought a medical doctor who recognized that healing sometimes requires patience and understanding rather than force. The fortress wasn't a puzzle to be solved by brute force. It was a patient that needed care. We brought engineers, scientists, and soldiers who had learned their trades not in sterile laboratories or perfect simulations, but in the messy, unpredictable conditions of Earth. They knew that the best solutions often come from improvisation, adaptation, and thinking outside established parameters. The alien delegates listened in growing amazement as Chen explained how each human had contributed to their success. "But our greatest weapon," Chen said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast hall, "was something none of your civilizations possess in quite the same way. We brought diversity." She paused, letting the word sink in. "Every other species in this hall evolved on a single world, developed unified cultures, created standardized approaches to problems. You perfected your methods over millions of years, and they are indeed impressive. But Earth gave us something different." Chen activated a holographic display showing images of Earth, deserts and Arctic tundra, deep oceans and high mountains, tropical jungles and windswept plains. Earth tried to kill us in every possible way. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, meteor impacts, climate changes, earthquakes, floods, droughts, predators, diseases, and natural disasters that would challenge any species. We survived not by developing one perfect solution, but by developing thousands of different solutions. The images changed to show human diversity, different races, cultures, languages, traditions, and ways of thinking. We developed not one culture, but thousands. Not one language, but thousands. Not one way of solving problems, but as many approaches as there are humans to think of them. When we faced the fortress, we didn't apply one unified strategy like your civilizations did. We applied 12 different perspectives simultaneously. Impossible, declared a Cognitron representative. Coordination requires standardization. Efficiency demands uniform approaches. Does it? Chen asked. Martinez saw the fortress as a geological engineering problem. Torres saw it as a communications challenge. Singh saw it as a matter of understanding environmental stress. Each of them was right, and each of their solutions was necessary for overall success. She gestured to her team. These 12 humans represent 12 different backgrounds, educations, cultures, and ways of thinking. A farm boy from Texas, a psychologist from California, a geologist from India, a communications specialist from Puerto Rico, a biologist from Korea, a medical doctor from Nigeria. Each of them brought something unique to the problem. But how? Do you coordinate such chaos? Asked the Luminari representative. Captain Rodriguez, their pilot, stepped forward. We talk to each other, not through data networks or hive minds or telepathic links. We argue, we discuss, we share ideas. We build on each other's suggestions. Sometimes the best ideas come from combining completely different approaches. We adapt, added Dr. Kim. When one approach doesn't work, we try another. When we encounter something unexpected, we improvise. We don't have predetermined solutions for every situation. We create new solutions as we need them. We question everything, said Dr. Park. Even our own assumptions, especially our own assumptions. Just because something has always been done one way doesn't mean it's the best way. Chen nodded approvingly. This is humanity's arsenal, not energy weapons or quantum technology or reality manipulators. Curiosity instead of certainty. Adaptation instead of rigid doctrine, the willingness to see problems from multiple angles instead of applying the same solution to every challenge. The fortress had been waiting for 10,000 years for visitors who would approach it with understanding instead of force, communication instead of conquest, help instead of exploitation. We succeeded not because we had better weapons, but because we had better questions. The Great Hall was completely silent as the implications sank in. Every other species here tried to solve the fortress with their greatest strengths. Chen continued. Energy manipulation, bioadaptation, quantum physics, stellar engineering, all impressive capabilities. But sometimes the answer isn't about being more powerful, it's about being more thoughtful. Council Speaker Vex Athara finally spoke. Are you saying that diversity is more powerful than unity, that chaos is superior to order?